afternoon to you. I want to talk about airline prices in Southeast Asia and in the Philippines today. I've traveled quite a bit domestically here in the Philippines, as well as internationally across Southeast Asia. So I want to share some of that I've learned, some of the stuff I've learned about traveling, and more importantly, prices. Recently saw article. It came out in one of the newspapers here. I want to say Phil Life, but it was talking about 30K pesos, 30,000 pesos to Siargao domestically. And I was like, there's no way. And so I kind of looked into it. I was like, most I've ever paid is maybe a couple $100. So, and then as cheap as, maybe a little over 100. That's round trip from Clark or Manila. And so I found this kind of strange. I was like, wow, that's quite a bit. That's a little bit less than I just paid to go to the U.S. and back. So I did some investigating and look into the prices to see if I found what they were putting out, because they said they're going to try to get the airlines to lower the prices. And what I found out, the prices are still the same. I mean, I've used Sunlight most of the time to travel down to Siargao from Clark. I've used Cebu Pacific. I had to change planes in Cebu at the time. But I've mainly flown Sunlight. I think I did fly Philippine Air once. But mainly it's been Sunlight Air because they had direct straight from Clark down to Siargao. And I'm just not seeing it. Probably the average is maybe $150, $180 max. And everything, I'll say this about airline prices in Southeast Asia and the Philippines. Most of the airlines here have constant sales. So just look out for those sales from Philippine Air, Air Asia, Sunlight, Cebu Pacific, all those airlines. And you're flexible, you can always find a good deal. $150 is really not uncommon at all. That's kind of more the norm to go where you need to go. Probably the most expensive place now is Batanes. It's just because there's less flights, but they are having direct flights from Clark now. I think they have that from Manila, but that's going to be, like I said, less flights. Batanes brings down or brings up the flights. It's a supply and demand thing. But they're probably the most expensive place domestically in all the Philippines. But I just found that 30,000 Siargao. I was like, wow. Because, and one of the things I've recently, talking to people and then just my own general knowledge is sometimes it's cheaper to fly to other Southeast Asian destinations than to fly domestically here in the Philippines. Why is that? And then a lot of times the hotels are more expensive here than other Southeast Asian countries, such as Vietnam or Thailand. And so to see that headline, it just kind of got me a little bit, because I was like, wow, that's quite a bit. But anyway, that's what I'm finding. So I don't know where they got that from. Said, I guess the Department of Tourism's looking into it. But I could see if they were coming from internationally. But the article said domestically, and that's what threw me off. Now, if you're flying in from Australia, you want to go Siargao, okay. Or somewhere else, maybe Japan. I don't know. But that was just high. But they did say domestically, not internationally. Okay, that's my first topic I want to talk about. And I'll try to post a link on this in the description of this video when I get done. So if you want to read it for yourself, look at it, there you go. Okay, my next topic is Starlux, which I just flew to the U.S. I flew up to Taipei and then over to so Taiwan from Clark, and then on over to LA, and then I went from there in the U.S. Well, now Starlux, I knew they were opening up a new landing spot in Phoenix for a hub. And what I've now just found out and read is Starlux is partnering with American Airlines, which Phoenix is one of their hubs, to go anywhere in the U.S. via American. And the good thing about it is you only need one ticket. You buy one ticket to leave the Philippines, well, you can go all the way to your final destination in the U.S. on one ticket. Your bags can be checked through. So all those are good things. And I really like Starlux, and a lot of people like Eva, and I do too. But Starlux, a little newer airline, much newer airline, I should say, and newer aircraft. So, yeah, that's a real good thing. So, since I was going to fly Starlux anyway, when I fly again, well, back to the U.S., this just gives me more reason to. I can get over to the East Coast from Phoenix and that sort of thing. Like I said, if you watch my previous video about my traveling, the only problem I had traveling on Starlux when I left LA, they wanted an onward ticket, and I didn't need it because of my visa status. And I worked it out, and so I made it. But that's the only problem I had. But the flight itself, purchasing the tickets, the transfer process were all great. And when you come in from the Philippines and Taiwan, they do send you back through a secondary security, pretty brief, and it's pretty quick. Coming back from the U.S., you don't have to go through that. I guess they trust the U.S. Security enough, and so that saves you a little step there when you're flying back into Taiwan to come back here to the Philippines. But so I thought that was big news. They'll probably have some sales coming up. They've had sales, Starlux. I know when I flew, it was about $700 ticket round trip. Now it is, I've seen them as cheap as $600. We'll see what they do for sales, probably to light up their Phoenix gateway. So stay tuned for that. And I'll also post that link as well in the description of this video. Okay, the third thing I want to talk about right now is Thailand is offering free domestic tickets for international travelers when they fly into Thailand. I think it's going to start in September, but I'm not sure. You can read the article again. I'll post a link in there. There's been quite a bit on this, but you can buy it directly from the airline or a travel agent and still get the free ticket. So once that's approved, I believe by the Thai government, then that'll be available. So that's good news if you're a traveler to Thailand. That's indeed good news, because like myself, if you're going to fly into Bangkok and you want to go, let's say to Chiang Mai, you want to go down to Pattaya, well, you fly into Bangkok like to go to Pattaya, and then you get a taxi or Uber or whatever, and or I should say Grab, and go down to Pattaya. So that works out if you get a domestic ticket. So that's good news. We'll see what materializes out of that once it's finally finalized, if it is. But I thought that was good news. I thought I'd pass it on. Again, link will be in the description of this video. I want to talk a little bit about prices. Airline and buying tickets can be, a real pain in the butt. It's just hard, because they're constantly changing. They can change even within a day, but definitely day by day, week by week. So you got to constantly check for the best prices, check all the deals. I don't normally buy. I usually use third-party sites to just find out who has the cheapest tickets. And then I buy directly from the airline just to avoid any hassles later if you need to make a change or whatever it is. So that's the way I do it. But yeah, prices constantly changing. But like I said, check on those sales. Like I said, I was talking about Philippine Airlines, but also the airlines here, but also, airlines in Vietnam, like Vietnam Air, and in Thai, they have sales too. So check those out as well. Again, these prices that I'm going to tell you are just a snapshot in time. A lot of it was based on late October to early November travel. Um, it all really depends on how flexible you are. If you have to go someplace at a particular time and you can't be flexible, you're going to probably pay a little more unless you get lucky. But if you are patient and you've got more of an open agenda, that's when you're going to get your best deals. But again, don't quote me on the prices. It's a snapshot in time. I just want to kind of give you an idea. And I'm going to compare, excuse me, I'm going to compare flying out of Manila to flying out of Clark. And just me, if it's being closer to Clark, and knowing it's a lot less hassle than Manila, I would pay a little extra to fly out of Clark over Manila just because it is less hassle. I'm going to read you some fares to show you some comparisons. And like I said, these are more averages. You'd have to know your specific dates, where exactly you're going to go, how long you're going to stay to get the actual, fare you really want. But let's just take international flights. Flying from Manila to Singapore, I'm looking at about $198, and the airline that was mainly came up was Scoot, which is the low-cost carrier of Singapore Air. Flying the same airline from Clark is about $167, so just a little less than flying out of Manila, which is good because it's already less hassle. Flying to Vietnam, to Hanoi, I got $221 out of Manila on Vietnam Air. I've flown them, pretty good airline. You do just like a Philippine Air as well, flying out of there to Vietnam or somewhere. You get your meal, even though it's not that long a flight, a couple hours, and you get a meal, and it's good. It's normal international travel, unlike Cebu Pacific, which don't feed you. It's no frills whatsoever, kind of like Scoot, but I did like Scoot better than Cebu Pacific. So out of Manila, Hanoi about $221, and out of Clark about $215. So very close, very similar on prices there. But Vietnam Air going from Manila, from Manila to Hanoi, and from Clark to Hanoi, it was on Scoot. That was the biggest differences. And Da Nang again in Vietnam. I always think about the Good Morning America, Da Nang, Da Nang, Da Nang me. But anyway, that's here or there. But Da Nang is $310. Like I say, it's going to depend on the time of year. It just depends on a lot. But right now, for the dates that we're looking at, $310 to Da Nang on Cebu Pacific out of Manila. And then out of Clark, it was Hong Kong Express, and it averaged somewhere between $140 and $220. So Hong Kong Express, I've never flown them, so I can't speak about the flight there. Next one, Manila to Siargao, again Vietnam, and it was Cebu Pacific again, $176, and then from Clark is Scoot is $161. The problem with my phone to Vietnam, I've mainly flown out of Manila. The reason is I can get a direct flight. If you fly Scoot from Clark, you got a long layover normally in Singapore. It's just the way it is. So to avoid that, I hate going to Manila, but if I am going to Vietnam, I'll usually travel out of Manila until they have better flights out of Clark going to Vietnam. Let's talk Bangkok. Bangkok out of Manila, right now about $218. I've gotten it much cheaper than that, but again, it's a snapshot of when I was looking at, and that was again on Vietnam Air. Not a bad airline. I like Philippine Air better, going that route, but Vietnam Air is good. Bangkok from Clark, it depends. Again, it depends, but $140 to $160, we'll say. You can take Cebu Pacific. I went in May and flew Cebu Pacific. Like I said, they nickel and dime you on everything. There's no food like all the other carriers I've flown internationally in Southeast Asia other than Scoot. What else? Going from Manila to Phnom Penh, Cambodia, $360 on my snapshot I did. Singapore Air, which is a very good airline. And then also from Clark to Phnom Penh, it was on Singapore Airlines. So 360, 370 from Manila, and about 370 to 450 out of Clark. Phnom Penh, Cambodia is very expensive to get to unless you fly to Clark first and then fly to Bangkok first and then get another flight. Wouldn't be domestic, but still, it's a short flight, not that long from Bangkok over to Phnom Penh, and you might get a better deal that way. But flying direct from Manila to Clark, you're going to pay a little bit. I've been looking at the Phnom Penh flights for a while, and they just never seem to be that cheap. Maybe the cheapest I've seen, maybe over the last year, is $300, but usually it's pushing $400. Going direct, I should say, or going not through Bangkok. Let's talk domestic flights right now. Domestic flights, going to Siargao, like I just brought up, the 30K, going to Siargao domestically. I don't see it. I don't know where they got it from. But $184 from Manila on PAL from the dates I was looking at. You can get it cheaper, probably as cheap as $100. And then from Clark, they have really good flight times on PAL. Or the ones I've looked at, it runs anywhere from about $80 to $130. So $80 to $130 out of Clark to Siargao, which is a great deal. I know Sunlight Air flies there from Manila or from Clark. Or they did. They've had some changes, but I think that is still true. Flying down to Cebu, it really depends. Again, your dates. I've seen as cheap as $57 on Cebu Pacific out of Manila recently, where it was about $100 to $160 out of Clark to Cebu on Cebu Pacific. I know I was looking at specific dates recently for late September, and I couldn't get anything under, let's say, 180 to 200, and the flights were not optimum. Leaving a little after midnight, coming back they were okay, early afternoon, but going down there was just not good times, and it was not cheap. But you can get good deals down to Cebu. You just got to be flexible and not hit the wrong time that if you have a specific date you need to go. Boracay were very cheap to fly from Manila. I've seen anywhere from $60 to $90 recently. That's round trip. And then again, you fly into a couple different places like Calibo, and on Cebu Pacific out of Clark, I've seen it about 110 to 150, 160, somewhere in there. Again, that was on Cebu Pacific. The Boracay from Manila that was really cheap was on Air Asia. So Air Asia was the cheaper one, going from Manila. Boracay going from Clark. Cebu Pacific going from Clark down to Boracay. So those are just a snapshot in time of flight prices. You got to have dates, and it's a nightmare. It really is, shopping for flights. Sometimes I know why some people go through a travel agency, but I like doing most things myself if I can, even booking hotels, booking tours, whatever it may be. I know what I like, and I've been doing it long enough. I also can be flexible. So those are keys. But anyway, I just want to pass that information along to you. And, please leave a comment if you've taken a flight recently in Southeast Asia, the Philippines, what you paid, where you flew out of, what was the airline. I'm sure other people will be appreciative of the information as well. And I'll try to pass information like this on to you as it goes. And flying into Philippines around Christmas time is always the most expensive time coming from internationally. I will talk a little bit more about, I briefly touched on international, but I'll do some of that different video as well as more domestically and Southeast Asia internationally. But thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you enjoy my videos. Hope you got something out of it. And like I said, leave your comments. I try to help others out. And hopefully I did give some information out that will help somebody today.